business session of the July 6, 2021 meeting to order at 6:13 p.m. Welcome to all our guests and visitors. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on an agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearing, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you are here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation and the staff will distribute those to council. If you are unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. Esmeralda, do we have any registered speakers?
Yes, sir. We do have one registered speaker. There's a card at your place from Mr. Ellen Northcutt. He'd like to speak on item 429, so we'll have to pull that from the consent agenda.
That was 429.
Yes, sir.
When called to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Each speaker must limit comments to 3 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of a group of 10 or more individuals, please have those persons stand at the beginning of your comments and you will be given 10 minutes to address the council. Please note that if you stand in support of a person getting 10 minutes to speak, you are forfeiting your right to speak on that item. For any person addressing the council, through use of a translator, the speaking time will be doubled to accommodate the translation services. While public discourse is important to the council, we have to maintain order in a meeting so that all persons may be heard and the city business may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant of Arms shall remove from the council meeting any person who, while addressing the council or while attending the council meeting, makes personal, impersonate, or slanderous remarks, becomes boisterous, or makes unauthorized remarks from audience, claps hands, stomps feet, whistles, yells, or makes similar demonstrations. Now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business is to consider the minutes from the June 15th, 2021 City Council meeting. A copy of the minutes was provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? Those minutes will stand approved as submitted. And the next order of business is to consider public hearing 2021-411. And I believe Kent George, our Economic Development Program Manager, will be making a staff presentation on this.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This is a public hearing on an ordinance amending the project and financing plan for Reinvestment Zone Number 1 for tax increment financing, TIF Zone 1. To consider approving TIF funds in an amount not to exceed $1.3 million to JKBM Holdings, LLC, to redevelop the Oak Lodge Motor Inn site into new multi-use development consisting of condominiums, lofts, commercial, retail, and restaurant space, and an amendment to the agreement with Czech Brewing Company, LLC, to provide an extension of the project completion date for the renovation of a building at 320 through 324 South 8th Street, and an amendment to the agreement with Barron's Loft Partners, LLC, to provide an extension of the project completion date for the renovation of a building at 215 through 217 South 4th Street, and authorizing the city manager to execute any documents necessary to complete these transactions, providing an effective date, providing a saving clause, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you on first reading. On June 10th, 2021, the TIF Board voted 8-0 to recommend TIF funds in an amount not to exceed $1.3 million to JKBM Holdings, LLC, to redevelop the Oak Lodge Motor Inn site into a new multi-use development consisting of condominiums, lofts, commercial, retail, and restaurant space. And June 10th, 2021, the TIF Board voted 8-0 to recommend an amendment to the agreement with Czech Brewing Company, LLC, to provide an extension of the project completion date for the renovation of a building at 320 through 324 South 8th Street. And on June 10th, 2021, the TIF Board voted 8-0 to recommend an amendment to the agreement with Barron's Loft Partners, LLC, to provide an extension of the project completion date for the renovation of a building at 215 through 217 4th Street. As required by law, a notice of this public hearing was published in the Waco Tribune Herald on June 25th, 2021.
Thank you, Kent. Are there any questions for staff?
Hey, Kent, thank you so much for going through this. I do have some questions about the Oak Lodge Motor Inn site project that's on the agenda for this evening. It is my understanding that the closing date of this property has been pushed back some because the current owner wants to make sure that all of the tenants that are currently living in that place have somewhere to go once the sale is complete. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So no tenant right now will be left homeless through this process, or no one will be left without a home, I should say.
That is correct.
And then the buyer or the developer of this property has agreed to a lot of the regulations that maybe City Center Waco has. So like they're going to be working with businesses of color or locally owned businesses to really develop this property and this land, correct?
That is also correct.
I just, I think that is very important to, especially the part about making sure that no one is left homeless through this process. I know that there was a lot of concern and rightfully so. But it makes to me, this is the ideal situation where the project is not taking place till everyone is comfortable in their new environment and has a new environment. And because of that, this public hearing has my full support.
Any other questions for staff?
If there are further questions about relocation of existing tenants in the space, Renisha Hudnall is here and can answer the specific responses that the city staff has been working to ensure that happens.
Renisha, if you don't mind, I think that would be helpful to give kind of an update on some of your efforts on this. I had the privilege of driving by one day and seeing Renisha and her team working, and thank you for doing that.
So we are making every effort to house each individual that is located at the Oak Lodge residence. On June the 16th and the 17th, we did do outreach. We had 20 applications submitted, and we are working with those individuals to obtain the necessary documentation in order to push the applications through. But we have partnered with Mission Waco, and they will assist us during the process.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And Hector, I think a point of clarification might be that we'll give residents an opportunity for housing. I don't think we can guarantee that
Sure,
they will
sure,
accept the opportunity
sure.
for that. But thanks to some of the grants that we've been given, federal grants that we've been giving for rental assistance, we are able to
Absolutely.
help tenants find housing. And Renisha, this is maybe a subjective call, but I would venture to say that the housing that based on the grant program that we have and the housing that's available in the community, it should be better in quality than what I would assume the current conditions of the Oak Lodge Motor Inn are. Is that based on your understanding? I would assume that there's in other words, is there, maybe the question I would have, a baseline level of quality for the new housing that tenants would go to if given a federal grant for the tenant-based rental assistance?
Yes, that is a correct statement.
Okay, great.
Absolutely, and thank you for that clarification, Mayor. I think that the city is doing its part to make the transition easier for those residents, and I think that's very important.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? I'm just going to reiterate what was said. I think that this project is going to be a success for several reasons and an improvement for our downtown, but I want to give a special thank you to Mission Waco, Church Under the Bridge, and our housing department, who sat for 2 hot days in a parking lot working with residents to get them signed up to for what I'm sure, as Renisha just said, will be better housing. So this is a win not only for downtown, but also for the residents, I believe. And I'm thankful for, again, the creativity and innovation of our city team and our city family for coming together around this issue. Please poll the council.
Yes, sir. Holmes?
Aye.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes. That motion carries, and we'll now move on to public hearing 2021-412.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This is a public hearing to receive comments on the 21-22 Annual Action Plan prior to submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The City of Waco's Citizen Participation Plan requires that the city conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the 21-22 Annual Action Plan prior to submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Annual Action Plan includes a housing, homeless, and community development needs plan for addressing priority needs and the city's specific plans for the use and spending of the 21-22 Community Development Block Grant Funds and Home Investment Partnership Funds. The plan was made available for the public's review on June 10, 2021, and will remain available through July 9, 2021. Hard copies are available for public's viewing in the City Secretary's office, the Housing Office, and the public libraries. The notice for this public hearing was published in the non-legal section of the Waco Tribune-Herald newspaper and posted on the city's website, posted at the city libraries, and on the city's bulletin boards.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing, and there's no action required, so we will move to the next item, which is public hearing 2021-413. And I believe Beatrice Wharton is going to be making a presentation for us on this item.
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor and City Council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. 1, final plat of the Landreth Gardens Addition Phase 2, 2, final plat of the Landreth Gardens Addition Phase 3, and 3, final plat of the Springs Addition Phase 1. I did also want to respond to Mayor Meek's question that came up during our work session this afternoon regarding residential design standards that are being proposed in August. So specific to these subdivision plats, the Landreth Gardens Addition is actually a plan unit development, and so it comes with its own set of residential design standards that would actually be consistent with what is being proposed in the future. And then the Springs Addition is actually in the ETJ, so zoning does not apply, which includes the residential design standards that are being proposed.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Palmer? Aye. Porterud?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Me?
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll now move to the consent agenda. The following resolutions were pulled from the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. That's item 429. So is there a motion on resolution 2021-429?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
And point of clarification, will we allow speakers now? Is this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Mr. Northcutt, are you here to speak on this item?
Alan Northcutt. With the deadly record scorching heat waves in the West and Canada and the massive mega drought in the western U.S., the climate change fueled weather extremes are evident right now. Now, the Sustainability Board recommended that the transition to electric vehicles be undertaken by the council, but this proposed purchase of Ford F-250 trucks does not really demonstrate a serious effort to consider electric alternatives. None of the places that the requests for bids were posted are likely to reach anyone with an understanding of electric trucks. A basic knowledge of the field will tell you that at this moment, Rivian Corporation is the only source of an electric pickup, and their first deliveries are actually happening this month. The Rivian R1T specs show a payload capacity of 1,760 pounds, which is actually higher than the Ford F-250. So before approval of additional polluting internal combustion engine trucks, the city should at least consider Rivian and determine if their R1T is compatible with the city needs. And I know that includes various service bodies that are used with these trucks. Now, none of the Ford vendors that were listed even have access to the Rivian. They're Chevy, Ford, Dodge, and so forth. So there was no attempt to even look at a real electric truck. So I would recommend a no vote until an electric vehicle is actually considered on this. The other thing I wanted to say under hearing of visitors is that the International Code Council approved changes to building standards for new homes, and they are recommending having EV charging infrastructure in new construction. And they note that the U.S. has some 9.6 million EV charging ports that will be required by 2030. Most of these are in homes, so that is really the key area for charging infrastructure is within new homes. So they recommend 3 different ways we can do this: having EV circuitry, having circuitry plus a 240 outlet, usually in a garage, or actually including a level 2 charger. I would recommend the second of just having the circuitry and then having a 240 outlet in new homes. This is a great opportunity for the city to initiate this type of standard. You know, with 20-year mortgages, in 20 years, everybody's going to be driving electric vehicles. So we can start now to require this type of infrastructure in homes. Also, I would note that it's cheaper to install this at the time a new home is built than, you know, retrofitting a home. It's, you know, 3 or 4 times cheaper to do it at the time the new home is built. And this wouldn't cost the city anything as well. So this would be a great opportunity, in my view, for the city
Thank
to
you,
move
Dr. Northcutt.
forward.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second? Is there any discussion?
I have a few questions for our city staff, and I don't know if City Manager Ford or someone would answer this, but the need or the ask for electric vehicles, was it part of the RFP process when we were looking for these F-250s?
I'm going to have Paul Kane respond to that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Paul Kane, Assistant City Manager. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, we did, in our bid solicitation, and in this case, I'd like to point out, in this case, we deviated from what we've done in the past. In the past, we've used buy boards to buy these vehicles. In this case, we advertised on the website a number of different ways.
Sure.
For anybody to apply or submit a bid for these particular vehicles. And we did open it up to anyone, including any of the electric vehicle vendors that are out there today. And we only got responses back from those who submitted gas burning vehicles. So
Sure.
that's where we are today. And yes, you're right. We did submit open bids to anyone that wanted to bid.
So anyone, even with electric vehicles, could reply to the RFP, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's correct.
Thank you, sir. That's what I wanted to make sure. Thank you so much.
Paul, do you have an estimate of when you think these Revion trucks would be on the market for a municipal government to purchase?
We actually got some information from one of our sustainability board members today, and I believe that she had talked about maybe delaying these purchases till I think the last quarter of 2022, if I remember right. And that was the time estimate for Rivian to perhaps have some vehicles available for the market then. One of the things about waiting, and you know, we tend to identify vehicles a year in advance for replacement based on their overall score. For example, these vehicles were actually identified for replacement about this time last year. And so we go through the process, and they're budgeted in this fiscal year, and then we go through the bidding process, and so we end up where we are today for vehicles that were actually identified for purchase over a year ago. So that's the time frame that we're on today.
So it would be fair to say that in the 20, because these are the 20, what came up in 2019 that we're replacing now.
They were identified in 2020 for the 2020-21 budget we're in today.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but there's, in fairness, would probably be another set that are about to be identified?
There are some more that are coming. That's right.
So the potential is, and I ask this way because if, you know, the people who know we buy, you know, the people who we deal with know we buy cars.
Right.
How familiar are the people who are functioning with electric vehicles that we're of that mindset now?
Well, traditionally it's been the normal dealers,
Sure.
whether it be Chevy, Ford,
Sure.
Dodge, those. But now with others coming into the market, we can specifically send bid proposals to them now and say, hey, do you have anything that would meet these specs?
Did we
So
do
we'll
that?
continue to, we can do that in the future for sure.
But-
We could target them.
But did we?
We
Or did
didn't
we
in this
just
case, we
open-
just
just
advertised
open
it
for-
to
okay.
anyone that wanted to. And we, as you saw in the item, there's a number of different media that we use, Electronic State Business Daily, which is utilized by a number of different vendors, Demand Star. So we put it out like we do all of our bids to anyone who is willing to submit a bid. But we can specifically send it
So
to.
we could send out bids for in this next cycle that we're
Yes.
approaching for,
Invite them to bid.
uh-huh,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
And we did advertise in the bid for pricing for both gas-powered and electric vehicles.
We did. That's correct.
And we've made some progress towards that, as with our new Park Ranger vehicle, you know, that's electric, and so maybe not as quickly as we ought to, or maybe some would love to see, but I think we are making that direction while still making sure that we are being fiscally responsible with our taxpayers' dollars as well. And so I think that's a big component of it.
Yes.
And with the
I'll-
commitment to charging stations being in our new developments that are incentivized, some of them, right?
We do. And Dr. Northcutt's question about the building codes is certainly
Sure.
something we can look at and should look at. I'll also point out, council will recall back in March, we talked about our fleet as a overall replacement program, coming up with a replacement program, targeting EVs as part of that. We have submitted RFPs for that process, and so we'll be coming back to council with the vendor to help us put together a plan. And electric vehicles will be a significant part of that plan going forward.
I do want to maybe hop in here and build on something Mayor Pro Tem said that I think is important context, which is that we're going to be able to move to the electrification of our fleet as the market is ready to supply it. We're able to do that now in sedans and small SUVs because the market is supplying really good alternatives. Anecdotally on Rivian, I mean, folks that put in deposits and secured their vehicles over a year ago still don't have their vehicle. And that's just not something that you're going to hear me as manager feel comfortable with. Waiting years for vehicles. So I do think the market's responding. I do think the day is coming when trucks will be electrified by all major manufacturers, as well as the Rivians and the Cybertrucks and et cetera, and their capabilities are going to be phenomenal. I just want to do that in a prudent manner.
And Ms. Holmes over here, I support this resolution. I think we need to buy these trucks. But I do agree with the spirit of what Dr. Northcutt has mentioned, that maybe in this interim period where the technology isn't quite here yet, we do reach out to a broker of some kind that can at least tell council, hey, these are still, $15,000 higher than normal, or not, somehow. If there's a way to do that fairly in the bid process without showing any kind of favoritism, if we could incorporate that, I think it would be helpful to me.
Absolutely, we can, and we'll reach out to those unique vendors and find out who their fleet contacts are and make sure that they're on our bid list going forward.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Quick discussion. I really appreciate, Councilmember Bearfield, what you had asked about, did we specifically reach out to these groups? I think when we look at hiring often, when we want to diversify our workforce, you can't continue to do old things and get new results. And so for that reason, I'm going to be voting no on this, even though I hear the intention behind the process. Even for more trucks that are gas guzzling still have an impact on our environment. So I want to note that with the caveat that if we were to specifically target these kind of dealerships in the future, that would be a yes vote for me.
But for point of clarification, are there vehicles that exist to serve the purposes of these vehicles in the market right now?
That you can go get?
Yeah.
No. I would say no. There are vehicles coming by Rivian.
Yep.
If you went out to place a deposit for a Rivian vehicle right now, you could not receive it in the time that we have a business case use to receive it.
So to clarify, we need these trucks for a specific purpose. Now, and there's not a vehicle that exists to serve the purpose that the city needs for a vehicle like this to date, correct?
I would definitely agree with that statement.
Thank you. Okay, please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
No.
Porterwood.
Yes.
Bearfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move on to the consent agenda, which consists of resolutions 2021-4 2021-14 through 2021-437, with the exception of Resolution 429. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval on consent agenda.
Second.
Please poll the council.
Holmes. Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido. Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll now move on to ordinance 2021-438.
An ordinance amending the project and financing plan for reinvestment zone number 1 for tax increment financing TIF or TIF Zone 1 to number 1, provide TIF funds in an amount not to exceed $31,920 to City Center Waco to assist with professional services for conceptual design and budgeting associated with the redevelopment of the Cotton Belt Railroad Bridge, located in line with Mary Avenue and crossing the Brazos River between Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and University Parks Boulevard. 2, amend the agreement with 514 Austin Avenue LP to provide an extension of the project completion date for the renovation of buildings at 510, 514, and 518 Austin Avenue. And 3, allocate an additional $300,000 to the facade improvement grant line item in the project and financing plan to fund future facade improvement projects, all projects being within TIF Zone 1 in Waco, McLennan County, Texas. And authorizing the city manager to execute any documents in connection therewith, providing an effective date, providing a savings clause, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 4-0 council vote on first reading on June 15, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes. Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. We'll move on to ordinance 2021-439.
An ordinance abandoning the remainder of a 20-foot alley located between Mary Avenue and Jackson Avenue and South 6th Street and 8th Street, described as being a 0.015 acre tract of land situated in the T.J. Chambers Survey, abstract number 7, McLennan County, Texas, being all of the remainder of the called 20-foot wide alley separating tracts 1, 2, and 3, described in deed to SRH Hospitality Waco Realty LLC, a Texas limited liability company, as recorded in McLennan County Clerk's File Number 2020-036868 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, from tracts 1 and 2 described in deed to BRWT LLC, a Texas limited liability company, as recorded in McLennan County Clerk's File Number 2020-042605 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on June 15, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2021-440.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as Lot 19, Block 6, Waco Heights Addition, known as 500 North 34th Street, shall be changed from O3 district classification and B designated into R1B district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on June 15, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes.
Aye.
Palmer. Aye. Porteroo.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Sabido.
Yes.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. Now we'll move on to the hearing of visitors. Are there any registered speakers for the hearing of visitors?
No, sir, I don't have any cards.
Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, or commission liaison visits? And finally, are there any council requests for scheduling of future agenda items? If not, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:43 p.m. Have a great night, everybody.